You know, usually when we talk about um, learning the truth or changing our minds, we kind of frame it as this simple maintenance task.
Right, like a quick fix or something.
Exactly. Think about updating the software on your phone. You find a bug, you download the patch, the app restarts, and suddenly everything runs a little smoother.
Yeah.
It's an easy, painless fix.
Well, that's the dream, right? A totally simple correction. You had bad data, you swap it for good data, and your brain just processes it like a minor software update.
Right, a pure swap.
Yeah, it's a purely binary transaction. It doesn't hurt.
But then you encounter a completely different kind of truth. You go to install that simple software update, and the system just freezes.
Oh, yeah. The dreaded freeze.
To dig into the code, and you suddenly realize the problem isn't the app. The entire operating system you're running on is fundamentally incompatible with reality.
Mm.
Like your whole mental computer is crashing.
And at that point, you aren't doing maintenance anymore. You're dealing with a total systemic collapse. The entire structure of reality that you've been using to navigate your life is suddenly completely suspect.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a fascinating stack of sources today, ranging from cognitive psychology papers to some really profound modern philosophical essays.
And they are all exploring one, frankly, terrifying question.
They really are. What happens when a new piece of information completely destroys your sense of who you are?
It's heavy stuff.
Definitely. Because we are not just talking about memorizing facts here. We are looking at the actual mechanics of identity.
Right.
Our sources establish an incredible premise right out of the gate. Surface truth is just a software update, and you happily move on.
Yeah.
But deeper truth is an existential threat.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why does deeper truth feel so incredibly threatening to the human mind? Like, why does it trigger a panic response?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really comes down to the critical difference between information and identity.
Information versus identity.
Yeah, because surface truth, like the bug fix in your analogy, it just asks if a belief is factually correct.
Okay.
But deeper truth doesn't care about the facts on the surface. It drills down into the very foundation of your psyche.
Yeah.
It asks why you hold a certain belief, what psychological function that belief served for you, and most terrifyingly, what part of your very self depended on that belief being true.
I see.
When truth crosses that specific line, it stops being a trivia question. It moves from the level of information directly to the level of identity.
So it's like surface truth is fixing a typo in your social media bio. You just hit backspace, correct the spelling, hit save, and go about your day.
Exactly.
But deeper truth is logging in, reading your bio, and realizing someone else wrote the entire thing.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to visualize it, yeah.
And you've just been blindly acting out that script for 20 years. Like you've been playing a character you didn't even cast yourself in.
You realize you aren't the author. And, the research we are looking at points out exactly who those other writers of your bio actually are.
Who are they?
Well, we are entirely shaped by early conditioning. And those sources of conditioning are everywhere, operating completely under the radar.
Like what, specifically?
It's the unspoken family dynamics you grew up in. It's the cultural expectations of your specific society.
Right.
It's profound emotional experiences or traumas you've survived. And perhaps most importantly, it's the very specific, customized survival strategies you developed as a kid to cope with all of it.
That makes so much sense.
All of these invisible forces shape how you interpret reality today. And here's the trap these cognitive psychology papers highlight.
Okay.
Over time, these learned patterns become totally automatic. They feel entirely natural. They disguise themselves.
I see what you're saying. They masquerade as our actual personality.
Exactly.
We don't walk around saying, well, my tendency to people pleasers is actually a hypervigilant defense mechanism I developed in a chaotic childhood home to avoid conflict.
Right. Nobody says that at a dinner party.
We just shrug and say, I'm just a really nice, easygoing person. That's just who I am.
Precisely. You take a mechanism of survival and you label it me.
Wow.
So when a new profound truth comes along and touches those deeply buried layers of conditioning.
Like, say, you realize your people-pleasing is actually destroying your career.
Exactly. When that happens, it is profoundly destabilizing. Your brain isn't processing an intellectual debate. It's registering an earthquake in the mind.
The operating system is failing.
The system is crashing.
Which leads to those terrifying questions. The internal monologue immediately starts screaming. One of the philosophical essays captures this panic perfectly. When that foundation shakes, your mind asks, if this core belief about being the nice one is not true, then what else have I completely misunderstood?
Right, it unravels everything.
And if this identity is not stable, then who am I beneath it? That is a terrifying void to stare into if you're just looking into the abyss.
It is the ultimate vulnerability. You are stripped of the psychological armor you didn't even know you were wearing.
But if we're going to survive this destabilization, I mean, if we want to keep the whole mental house from collapsing on our heads, the consensus across these sources suggests we have to make a change.
Major change, yeah.
We have to fundamentally change our relationship to the concept of truth itself. We have to stop treating truth like a single blunt wrecking ball that just smashes into our lives.
What's fascinating here is the framework the psychological literature provides for navigating this without collapsing.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The consensus is that truth actually unfolds in layers. We usually treat it like a binary switch. It's either true or false.
Right, on or off.
But it's much more like an archaeological dig. And crucially, these layers do not cancel each other out. Uncovering a deeper layer doesn't make the top layer a lie.
Interesting.
It simply deepens your understanding of the whole site.
Okay, I want to ground this because otherwise it just sounds like abstract theory. The sources outline 4 specific layers of truth. Let's apply this to a real-world scenario.
Sure.
Walk me through a hypothetical. Let's say you get unexpectedly laid off from a job you've had for a decade. How do we excavate that event through these 4 layers?
Let's do it. So the first layer is surface truth. This is the realm of pure objective facts.
Okay.
In your scenario, the surface truth is simply, my position was eliminated due to budget cuts, and I am no longer employed. It's data. It corrects the factual record of your daily schedule.
Right. It's the typo correction.
Uh-huh.
I was employed, now I am unemployed. Easy to grasp logically.
But logic doesn't stop the panic.
Yeah.
So you drop down to the second layer, which is psychological truth.
Okay, what does that look like?
This layer reveals your deeply ingrained patterns of thought and emotion. It's not about the fact of the layoff. It's about how your mind habitually responds to it.
So the internal reaction.
Exactly. The psychological truth might be, I am completely spiraling into anxiety right now because I have unconsciously tied my entire sense of self-worth to my economic productivity.
Oh, wow. Okay, so now we aren't talking about the boss or the budget anymore. We're talking about my internal wiring.
Precisely.
The fact of the layoff is just a trigger for a much older psychological pattern.
Exactly. You are reacting to the conditioning, not just the event. Then we go deeper to the third layer, symbolic truth.
Symbolic truth. Okay.
This gets into the archetypes and the deep underlying narratives beneath your experience. It asks what the event represents on a mythic or structural level.
Mythic. Like a story.
Yeah. This symbolic truth might be that the archetype of the provider or the loyal servant that you built your life around has just been symbolically killed.
It's the story I've been telling myself about my place in the tribe. If I'm not the provider, I have no role in the village.
Spot on. And finally, you hit the bedrock. The fourth layer, existential truth.
The big one?
The biggest. This layer bypasses the event, the psychology, and the story entirely. It asks massive questions about the very nature of your existence.
What kind of questions?
The existential truth forces you to ask, if I am not my job, and I am not my productivity, and I am not the societal role, then who am I really in the quiet moments when I am completely alone?
Okay, I see the progression, and it's profound.
Mm.
But wait, I have to push back on this for a second.
Go ahead.
Because if you're listening to this, you might be thinking what I'm thinking. Isn't that just completely exhausting?
That sounds like a lot.
Right. If I am constantly drilling down into the archetypal meaning and existential void of every single thing that happens to me, how can I possibly function day to day?
That's a very fair point.
Am I supposed to be interrogating my own reality and having an existential breakdown in aisle 4 of the grocery store just because they ran out of my favorite coffee?
This raises an important question, and it's a completely valid concern. If you approach this framework as an interrogation, yes, you will absolutely burn out by Tuesday.
Yeah, I'd be done by Monday afternoon, honestly.
Right. Interrogation implies a hostile environment. It's you shining a bright, harsh spotlight in your own face, demanding immediate answers from your psyche.
Which sounds awful.
It is. But the literature provides a specific mechanism for navigating these layers without exhausting yourself. And it requires a fundamental shift in how you process your inner world.
I'm all ears. If the alternative to interrogation isn't just sticking my head in the sand, what is it?
The required shift is moving away from the reflex of judgment and moving intentionally toward the practice of observation.
Observation versus judgment. That sounds great on a bumper sticker. But break down the actual mechanics for us. How does that look in the messy reality of everyday life?
Let's look at the mechanics. Judgment is what drains your battery. When your mind produces a strong, painful emotional reaction, like the panic of that job loss,
Right.
the human instinct is usually twofold. You either try to suppress it, shoving it down and pretending you're fine, which takes an immense amount of caloric and emotional energy,
Oh, absolutely.
or you blindly follow the emotion, lashing out in anger, drafting a toxic email to your old boss, and defending your ego.
We've all been there.
Right. Both suppression and blind reactivity are exhausting forms of judgment. You are judging the emotion as a problem to be solved or an enemy to be fought.
It's like being caught in a raging river. You're either frantically swimming against the current to get back to where you were, or you're just letting the rapids smash you into the rocks.
Yes.
Both are going to drown you.
That's a perfect analogy. Observation, however, is the ability to step out of the river completely.
Step out of the river, okay.
You stand on the riverbank and you just watch the water flow by.
Mm.
You notice the thoughts, the racing heart, the defensive beliefs, but you don't immediately try to change them or obey them.
You just watch.
Exactly. In practice, when you feel that defensive spike, you don't label yourself as a failure for feeling it. Instead, observation asks a much quieter, gentler question. What specific part of me is reacting right now, and why is it so afraid?
And that brings us to what I think is the most beautiful, counterintuitive point in all of the psychological research we reviewed. It's about the vital role of compassion in this process.
It's so crucial.
Because when we use observation and we finally spot an outdated belief, maybe a defense mechanism that is clearly causing us problems today, the goal isn't to just harshly discard it like it's garbage.
No, not at all.
We are instructed to view that faulty belief with deep compassion.
Yes, and there is a very practical neurological reason why we need this compassion. It's not just about being nice to yourself. It's about lowering the brain's threat response.
Ah, yeah.
When you ask, what part of me is reacting and why, the answer usually reveals something incredibly poignant. That false belief you are now trying to shed, it probably protected you during a very painful time in your life.
Right. It wasn't a flaw. It was a feature.
Exactly. That rigid black and white worldview might have provided a necessary sense of order when your childhood felt chaotic and terrifying.
That makes total sense.
That manufactured identity of being the perfect, agreeable employee may have been the exact survival strategy that allowed you to put food on the table when you were terrified of poverty.
It served a purpose. It kept you safe in the storm. It was a life raft.
It was a life raft, and recognizing that a belief is no longer serving you today, realizing that you are actually on dry land now and you look ridiculous trying to carry a heavy inflated raft on your back through the city.
Right. It's just weighing you down now.
It does not mean the raft itself was malicious. Understanding this dynamic allows you to essentially thank that defense mechanism for its service and then gently set it down.
Which brings us to a major key takeaway from the essays. Understanding dissolves fear more effectively than force.
Absolutely.
You cannot bully your own mind into a deeper truth. If you try to aggressively force your brain to abandon its life rafts, what happens?
The brain does what any organism does when attacked. It doubles down on its defenses.
It fights back.
Exactly. If the mind feels threatened, even if it's you attacking yourself with logic, the amygdala fires up and you become more rigid. Force creates resistance.
Wow.
Understanding, however, creates the psychological safety required for the mind to willingly unclench its grip and let the old belief go.
Okay, but let's play this out. Let's say I do that. I use observation, I use compassion, I calm my amygdala, and I manage to gracefully let go of that old, outdated identity.
Okay, a great start.
Even then, the cognitive research warns us that we are about to land in a very uncomfortable place. We hit this void.
The void, yes.
The old structure, that faulty foundation, is completely gone, but the new understanding hasn't fully formed yet. You aren't on the life raft, but you haven't built a house yet either. You're just floating in uncertainty.
And if there is one thing evolutionary psychology tells us, it is that the human mind absolutely loathes uncertainty.
It hates it.
The mind is a certainty-seeking machine. Ambiguity registers as danger. So when illusions dissolve and you enter this temporary period of limbo, the immediate biological temptation is to rush to fill the void.
We want a quick fix.
We desperately want a new, rigid certainty to replace the old one, just so we can feel the illusion of solid ground beneath our feet again.
It's the phenomenon of rebound beliefs. I love how the sources framed this. It is exactly like jumping into a rebound relationship a week after a terrible breakup.
Yes, that's it,
You
right?
just grab the first solid-sounding ideology that walked by so you don't have to sit alone in your apartment with your own thoughts.
Rebound beliefs is the perfect term. You see this all the time. Someone leaves a highly rigid, dogmatic religious community, and they experience that terrifying void.
And then what?
A month later, they have adopted a hyper-rigid, dogmatic political ideology. They haven't actually changed their underlying psychological structure. They still demand absolute certainty to feel safe. They've just swapped the content of the dogma. They got the dopamine hit of false certainty to mask the void. But inevitably, they will experience a second crash when that new foundation also proves incompatible with reality.
So how do we resist that rush? How do we sit in the void without grabbing the nearest dogma?
By recognizing that deeper truth is not a downloadable file, it rarely appears instantly. It is an organic process that emerges slowly.
It takes time.
It requires sustained reflection, dialogue, lived experience, and most importantly, it requires time. You have to actively allow space for the integration to happen.
And the research is very explicit about the emotional toll of this waiting period. The papers list specific emotions that are guaranteed to surface while you are navigating this void.
It's not a comfortable waiting room.
Not at all. You are going to feel profound sadness, unexpected anger, genuine grief for the identity you lost, and sometimes a sudden, disorienting rush of relief.
All the above.
And the crucial shift here is realizing that these emotions are not obstacles to finding the truth. They aren't signs that you're failing or that you need to retreat to your old beliefs.
Right.
They are vital biological signals that something deeply meaningful is finally being processed by your nervous system.
Right. Feeling those emotions, honestly, is the literal mechanism of integration. If you numb the grief or suppress the anger, you halt the integration process. You get stuck in the void.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. One of the philosophical essays positions curiosity as the literal opposite of fear in this context.
It's a beautiful concept.
Because I usually think of courage or bravery as the antidote to fear, but here it's curiosity, because fear closes the mind.
Yeah.
Fear builds walls, hunkers down, and defends the perimeter.
Exactly.
But curiosity keeps the mind porous. It looks at the crumbling foundation of your old life, and instead of panicking, it says, I wonder what kind of architecture we can build here instead.
That is the pivotal psychological shift. Curiosity is the engine of observation. It turns a threat into an investigation.
Okay, but human nature being what it is, maintaining that curiosity when you're floating in an uncomfortable void sounds nearly impossible. How do we actually do that without reverting to panic?
This is where the synthesis of our sources provides a highly practical toolkit. They outline 3 ongoing practices that act as a compass to guide you through this uncertainty.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first practice is honesty, but the literature defines this very specifically. It is not about never telling a lie to others. It is the internal willingness to see what is actually present in your life without distortion.
Meaning, not seeing what you wish was there and not seeing what used to be there, but acknowledging the raw reality of right now.
Yes.
No overly optimistic rose-colored glasses, but no cynical doom-colored glasses either.
Yeah.
Just reality. My job is gone and I am scared. That kind of honesty.
Exactly. Pure, undistorted acknowledgement.
But how do we sustain that? Because I could be honest for about 5 minutes before I want to distract myself.
That requires the second practice, reflection. Reflection is the ability to examine your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavioral patterns with immense patience.
Like the riverbank analogy.
Exactly. Remember the concept of observation we discussed earlier, standing on the riverbank. Reflection is turning that momentary observation into a sustained, deliberate habit. It's giving yourself the grace of time to let the water clear before you act.
Okay, so I'm being brutally honest with myself, and I'm patiently reflecting on my patterns. But knowing myself, the moment I finally get comfortable with my new truth, I'm probably going to get smug and rigid all over again.
It's a common trap.
I'll just build a brand new foundation made of sand. How do we prevent that?
That is exactly why the third practice is humility. And the sources argue this is perhaps the most critical practice for long-term psychological stability.
Humility.
Humility, in this context, is the deep, ingrained recognition that your understanding of reality can always deepen.
It's never truly finished.
Right. No matter how much you think you have figured out, no matter how solid your new worldview feels, there is always another layer beneath it. Your map of reality is not the actual territory.
So what does this all mean? We've gone on quite a journey today. We started with truth being this terrifying existential threat that crashes our mental operating system.
We cover a lot of ground.
We navigated the void of uncertainty, and we discussed the tools of honesty, reflection, and humility. Where does this process actually take us? If we do the work, what is the end goal?
It takes us to a profound internal evolution. Over time, your entire relationship with the concept of truth fundamentally transforms.
Transforms how?
Well, at the beginning of our deep dive, we established that truth felt like an external threat, a wrecking ball coming from the outside to destroy the stability of your life.
Right.
But through the practices of observation and curiosity, truth becomes something discovered within your own awareness.
It stops being a weapon pointed at you by a chaotic universe.
Yes. The mind begins to see that truth isn't just a collection of correct facts or dogmas that you have to violently defend against all challengers.
Hmm.
It is an ongoing dynamic alignment between your internal perception and external reality. And when you achieve that alignment, it creates a profound inner steadiness. The fear that once surrounded the idea of being wrong begins to naturally dissolve.
And here is the final paradigm shift, the real revelation for you listening to this right now. True, lasting stability in life does not come from holding the correct belief at all times.
It really doesn't.
We spend so much caloric energy in our lives trying to be perfectly right, arguing on the internet, defending our egos, because we secretly think that being right is what makes us safe.
But the cognitive and philosophical consensus says no. True stability actually comes from the willingness to learn.
That is the core message of everything we've looked at today. When you value the process of truth above the comfort of rigid certainty, you become far less afraid of change.
If a deeply held belief turns out to be incomplete, you don't panic. You just adjust the lens. If a startling new perspective appears, you don't attack it, you explore it. Your identity becomes wonderfully flexible rather than painfully fragile.
And when you reach this stage of psychological maturity, truth completely changes its nature. It no longer feels like a force that destroys your identity. It becomes the very mechanism through which your identity intentionally evolves.
The deeper, scarier layers of reality stop appearing as threats to your existence. They become invitations.
Invitations to what?
Invitations to understand the mechanics of your own mind and the nature of the world more clearly. It's an incredibly empowering, resilient way to live.
It really is. It changes everything about how you interact with the world, how you handle conflict, and how you view your own past.
Completely.
It makes me think about the wider implications of this, beyond just our own personal psychology. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, something that builds on everything we've unpacked. Let's hear it. If true, lasting stability actually comes from a willingness to learn and adapt our identities, what would our society look like if we publicly celebrated people for changing their minds, instead of attacking them for being inconsistent?
Oh, that is a profound question. Imagine the innovation and the freedom in that kind of culture.
Right. Imagine if realizing your foundation was made of sand wasn't a source of deep shame or a public scandal, but a genuine cause for celebration. Because now you finally get to clear the site and pour concrete.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning your certainties, keep observing the river, and most importantly, stay curious.